Warm greetings to one and all present here. Today, I, Ruchita Nair, founder and director of Women for STEM India, am honored to serve as your moderator for the panel discussion on the topic Most Women Pursue STEM to Get a Job or Start a Small Organization. What steps can be taken to inspire young girls to dream even bigger and be the next Elon Musk? To begin with, I would like to share a few helpful guidelines for today's panel discussion. Firstly, I would request all the guests to please keep the meeting link handy as you would have to rejoin it once the Zoom timer ends. Secondly, the session shall be held in parts of 20 to 30 minutes each, with a short break of 5 minutes between them. Please keep your camera and mic off at all times. Please send me your questions through personal chat to avoid disturbing the panelists. We hope you enjoy the session and learn tons from it. A little insight about the initiative under which we have organized this event. Women for STEM India is a recently started global initiative started by high schoolers to bridge the gender gap in STEM. At, at Women for STEM India, we believe that when someone does what they love and does it for the right cause, they bring about great change. And hence, we help each girl who works with us to find their ikigai to work towards all of our bigger goal of bridging the STEM gap. We work on documentaries, conduct talk shows, hold interviews, conduct STEM competitions like mega quizzes, hold STEM classes for underprivileged girls, have open for all webinars, and many more other things, such as this wonderful project for panel discussion. For future information, please feel free to check out our website at womenforstemindia.org.in. Introducing someone else is an art that helps build a connection with the person. Hence, I would like to request our panelists to introduce one another as a sign of unity to work towards our noble cause.
Good evening, everyone. Good morning, everyone, as per the timeline. So I would start the discussion and I would like to introduce Richard today. We have in our panelist, and he has been working since last 10 years in the upliftment of scientific research on a society. And he has been also, I think, working in the North Carolina University. And he has been the program coordinator at the Science Scholars, and he has been initiating science policies, and he has been working around a lot of making and framing policies towards the science frameworks and uplifting these scholars as well. Apart from that, he has, I think, graduated as a research assistant. He has also worked as to provide multidisciplinary environment that promotes basic clinical, behavioral, and translational research in the prevention, detection, and treatment of HIV infection. And that's a very noble cause to work around with. And apart from that, he has also been a president in UNC Science Policy and Advocacy Group, which is an organized forum where members both work, postdocs, faculties, and other advocate for science policy issues, both to improve upon existing policies and advocate for support for scientific research and education. I hope that I've covered a lot. So I will move with other panelists to just proceed with the discussion.
Thank you so much for that very kind introduction. I really appreciate it. And I have the honor and privilege of being able to introduce Dr. Eleonore Poli, or Ellie. Ellie is an engineer, but I think most importantly, she is an aspiring astronaut. There's a lot to say about Ellie, but one of the things that I remember from the first time I had the opportunity to meet her, she really believed in pushing oneself, following dreams, and reaching far out and beyond to do more and to be more. So at this time, I have the honor and privilege to introduce Dr. Eleonore Poli. Dr. Poli?
Thank you so much, Richard. And I have the honor of introducing Debanjan. And not only is he a brilliant academic, actually, he did his undergrad studies in mechanical engineering, did a PhD in Berkeley in also mechanical engineering, and then he did his postdoc in food mechanics, but on the topic of medical systems. So this is something I find very interesting. Is often when we think mechanical engineering, we think machines, we think maybe rockets or cars and things like this. But actually, a lot of mechanical engineering is also about other topics such as medical and biosystems. And this is what Debanjan did. And actually, the fun fact is not only is he a mechanical engineer, he's an assistant professor now in Boulder, Colorado University, but he's also a passionate musician and is in a band. So he teaches, he researches, and he plays music. And for me, he seems to be a wonderful human being. And I can't wait to have a discussion with him, but also with all the panelists here.
Thank you so much. That was very kind and generous. I'm wondering how I can top that as I introduce my fellow panelist, Hani Yadav. She is currently pursuing a doctoral program at the Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi. And she is a tech enthusiast, which, seems in line with her current training and current program, but she is also a big nature lover. I think we have something in common here amongst the panelists. She also happens to be somebody who has a fascination towards space. She loves black holes, and I think, along with Eleonore, shares that passion towards what's happening outside of our realm of the Earth. One of the things that she believes in a lot, which I think is very nice, kind of setting the context for our panel today, is the more you read diverse knowledge, the more you become wise. And I think keeping in mind the theme of the panel in terms of diversity, I think that's a good way to sum up the cognizant kind of vibe of our discussion today. So I am honored to introduce Hani Yadav from our panel today.
Thank you so much for the warm welcome, and thank you so much for the introduction.
Thank you everyone for such lovely introductions. Now that we're full of positive energy, let's start. Our topic states that most women pursue STEM to get a job or start a small organization. Miss Honey and Miss Eleanor, do you agree with the statement? What were your reasons to pursue STEM?
To begin with, yeah, please, Eleanor, please.
Go ahead, Honey, first.
Okay, yeah. So my reason was that I grew up into an environment where I was always fascinated about physics. Way back into my high school, I used to love physics, biology, and maths was also a great fascination for me. So growing up into an environment where engineering was also a prospect, and pursuing a tech degree was also something that was very common among my peers. So I was influenced to actually pursue engineering. And meanwhile, when I was actually pursuing engineering, I built up a certain kind of passion, which I could say that into technology. And with my master's topping up with that kind of research passion that I built up when I was doing my master's, I finally decided that, okay, I would like to pursue my career into this area. And tech is something which has a lot of diversity and which has a lot of adoption challenges as well. So I decided to actually build up frameworks, help policymakers, stakeholders, government, to actually how to initiate and how to build that integration of technology and how it can be a social good. And I personally believe that technology was always meant to be facilitate human decisions, whether it be into a social impact, or whether be into something which is more technical and which is more business impact. So it was always to actually facilitate what the human processes are doing. So that was something that I was really fascinated about. And I understand that technology is something which is a double-edged sword, and we have to handle it very with careful and with the research passion. I could build that kind of contribution to the society. So yeah, up to you, Eleanor. You're on mute, Eleanor.
Thank you so much. Even when you have a PhD, you don't know how to use Zoom. It's fantastic. It's very good for your ego, you know.
Yeah.
So for me, it was slightly different. I grew up in Switzerland, and despite being quite advanced country, we still have big differences between female and male kind of career paths. It's changing, but like around me, there was no real engineering or science role models around me. My family is mainly medics, actually. But I was, as you were, fascinated by physics and engineering as a kid. Like as a kid, I just wanted to know more about engineering and astrophysics, and I actually wanted to build machines. That was the big thing. I loved machines. I wanted to build stuff. I remember making some drawings, and obviously they had no value. I wasn't a genius by far. I was just thinking, oh, what would happen if we put solar panels on wind turbine? What happens is it's too heavy, it doesn't work. But back then I had lots of enthusiasm. And then I picked up studies. I decided to do math and physics. And despite me having more talent in other classes, I did it because I loved it and was like, well, I don't care if I don't get the top grades. The point is, I want to do something that I like despite it being difficult. But yeah, you know, if you take math physics classes, you obviously already have a gender difference. And for me, it didn't make a big difference, but I know some people for whom it did. And then I picked up material science and engineering and at university and continued to love it. Was fascinated with space and aeronautics, and I kept it up. And it was really, for me, the reason I did science is because I like it. I like discovering new principles. I also like the applied things. So I'm doing, for example, a postdoc right now. What I love about it is I get to read papers, I get to understand the fundamentals of science, and hopefully can make a contribution, but also make a direct contribution to the industry by solving problems. And I think, you know, you shouldn't pick up technology and, you know, STEM just because you think it's a good idea. You should have the passion for it.
Yeah,
But what is
true.
important in promoting STEM now, like we do today, is to simply give the choice to people. And I think from in Europe and in Switzerland, it's changing, but we still have a lot of kind of societal pressure that, you know, oh, you a bit masculine if you do this, and like, so what? Like I do something I love, but there's this kind of preconception that it's like not female thing, and I think can be a bit
Yeah.
sad. So I picked it up because I liked it. And yeah, I mean, yeah, sure, it's like it's not always easy, but I love it, and I'm so happy I picked science because it was really, it's a true passion, and it's something I think I will love till the day I die. Really, like it's just love it.
Mr. Debanjan, you work with a lot of young girls today. So, what do you think? Like, as Miss Eleanor said, and Miss Honey just told about their experience, what do you see in today's generation? What are the main reasons why girls are pursuing STEM? Also, I'm really happy that everyone here is a big physics fan because I personally love physics as well. That's really cool.
Who do you want to answer that question? Who
Ruchita, yeah. You were asking this question to whom? I think your voice was breaking in initially.
Sorry, am I audible now?
Yeah, you're clear now.
Okay, so basically my question was that Mr. Debanjan, as you
Yeah.
deal with a lot of young girls today who are pursuing STEM, what have you noticed is the main reason that they take up the career path? Like Miss Honey and Miss Eleanor just shared their experience. It was more about passion and aspiration, but a lot of girls do it for other reasons. So, like, what have you observed?
From the experience of having been doing sort of STEM research, at an advanced level for, I would say, nearly 10 years now, I still think passion and motivation is one of the big reasons where we have seen not only young female scientists, but also scientists who are from backgrounds that, at least in the US, are traditionally underrepresented, who take their career up in STEM. So I would still rate, passion towards, science and their motivation to pursue a career in STEM to be one of the biggest drivers. And I think perhaps an interesting point to discuss is how they, got inspired to pursue this passion is probably also an important factor. So for some of them, it was, as simple as, watching Star Wars and getting fascinated by science through like a genre of popular fiction and then kind of coming into science that way. But for a lot of people, it was also role models and mentors who guided their path at the right junctures in their life. And especially, for example, perhaps very cogent to Women for STEM India at the high school stage, right? Because that's where most of your career aspirations are kind of slowly starting to take shape. And if you are finding a supportive environment and a supportive mentor who can push you towards that direction, or a role model whom you can look up to and then kind of like aspire to kind of follow on their path, those kinds of factors have been big driving forces in addition to their passion to kind of bring these individuals into the STEM workforce, is what I would say that I've observed. There are several other factors here and there also, but that's a little bit more on the individual level. The idea of passion and motivation that was brought up by our prior panelists is still, I think, something very important that I continue to observe all the time.
Thank you, sir. That's really wonderful that passion is a key ingredient in today's world for pursuing STEM. Mr. Watkins, you have been working really hard to fill the small gaps that differentiate or separate community from STEM. What have you observed in terms of women and STEM?
So thank you so much for that great question. If I understood correctly, you're asking, based on my work bridging the gaps between innovation as a kind of a catch-all term and society, what have I seen in regards to women in STEM? So far, what I've seen as far as women in STEM is really once an individual is engaged in the pursuit of novel knowledge, which I think at the core is what science is. It's the pursuit, acquisition, dissemination, and the application of novel knowledge. There's no difference, right? I think a lot of what I have seen, and this is just my observations. I'm, just 38 years old, and I'm still learning the world around me, even though I'm slowly becoming an old man. I've noticed that a lot of the disparities that I've observed are rooted in historical injustices. We oftentimes ask, why is there a disparity in STEM? Why is there a disparity in research with globally women representing around 30% of the research community? I always also look at the kind of economic situation that we are seeing. And so there's also a huge disparity as far as economics. When you look at the poverty threshold, women are overrepresented beneath the poverty threshold. And so some people might ask, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Because oftentimes STEM occupations pay more than non-STEM occupations. And so you have that strange disparity. Well, I don't think it is a coincidence. I think it has to do a lot with historical oppression and historical injustices that we have not come to grips with. And when I say we, I'm not talking about the individuals on this panel. I'm talking about more generally. We have not come to admit that one of the reasons, or the primary reason, that we're not seeing women in STEM is because historically women have been constantly marginalized. For example, legal restrictions, educational access, voting rights, cultural norms and roles, violence and exploitation, employment bias. All of those things have gone together, and there is not a single society on this planet that has not participated in injustices towards women. And so I think that as far as understanding society and how it fits with STEM, we have to come to grips with the injustices that about 50% of our population, which are women, have faced. And so that's what I've noticed. Hopefully that came to address some of your question, but I just wanted to really kind of point that out, that this disparity or this discrepancy has a historic institutional and systemic basis, often many of which were done intentionally to disenfranchise women.
So you have made some really great points, and they do have they make sense that we have been just oppressing women in a way since history, since a long time. But don't you all think that that's really changing today? That in today's world, we're actually having we have so many initiatives like Women for STEM and Girl Up, and there's so many of them. So are they really having an impact? And don't you think it's really changing now? Like they have been up for a few years now. What impact is visible on the ground stage?
I think if I may start, you can see the change in some of the younger generation, and that's really, really good. Sometimes you can see some counterproductive work. For example, when you add quotas, you can generate a lot of hate and anger and understanding because you force companies to look at the gender more, when actually what you want to do is that the gender is not a factor anymore. Is that you treat everybody the same way, that should be what we aim to do. I remember teaching robotics to kids. When I was 15, I was teaching like 12 to 13-year-old kids, and we would get grants mainly if we had a quota of girls. But the problem is because we didn't have enough parents who would foster the interest in robotics for girls, we often didn't have enough girls. So we had a huge waiting list for boys and barely any for girls. And now that's changing. You can see the interest is changing. You can see it's coming. You can see people like you, for example. I remember when I was 15, 16, despite loving science, despite all this, I didn't have the confidence to start my own initiative for business. That's something that I only started doing later on after I was in my 20s, because I didn't have this confidence. I didn't believe I could do that. Whereas now you see 12, 13, 14-year-olds. I've mentored some girls the last years that were like, oh, I want to write a paper on rocket propellant. And you're like, wait, what? I mean, I wouldn't even have, even applying to university in science and engineering 10, 15 years ago, I felt like I didn't belong, because despite me feeling I don't really think I'm a woman or anything, I don't try to think about it, but still, it felt that I didn't deserve to be there. I would have to work 3 times as much. So yes, you see a difference. You see a difference that people getting more confidence, daring to try and do what they want simply. So it's amazing. And just the fact that, for example, you're here today is proof of that, that we are changing things. But yeah, it still takes time. And I guess at least another 30, 40 years before you would have any sort of gender parity in STEM. But, everything takes time. We just have to be patient, and we have to keep working towards this.
Yeah, that's true. And I totally agree with Eleanor, stating the fact that in my times as well, when I was in 12th and I was graduating, and so it used to be, to enter a mechanical class or to enter a civil class, it used to be a horror for me, because at that point of time, there used to be like 1 or 2 girls into 70 or 80 boys sitting, into a situation where even to put up ideas was very difficult. And even in electronics, even in electricals, so there are some streams where it is by default it is taken that it is much more percentage of boys that you will find out there, and that's fine. But the audacity to actually, the confidence to go get there and communicate your ideas, that's that used to be very difficult at that point of time. But now if you say that, that kind of awareness about that, yes, women are actually pursuing their ideas into STEM, and they're doing much better, and they are doing actually good on ground. So that I also give for example, if somebody asks me that how to do a PhD into this particular stream, I can guide them. So that's something, that kind of communication and awareness is very much important. So you asking me that, ma'am, what kind of quantum physics I can pursue for my future. That's something that I can share my ideas. Even all of us can share each ideas, and that will give you a strength that, okay, whatever I'm pursuing, I'm trying to pursue in my future, that is something that I can do it. You do not have to drop your idea. So I dropped my idea of getting civil. So at one point of time, I was actually fascinated to actually go and get civils and mechanics, but I opted electronics because it was something like that. My peers told me that, okay, you will find some girls, you will feel comfortable into that branch, you don't have to be uncomfortable sitting between 100 boys. So that's something that still, it's changing, but it has to be a long time when it will become equal, I would say, because I think it's much the gap is wide